Welcome to Let's Talk Church and Other Things. I'm your host, Shirley.
And I'm Corey.
And today our guests are soon to be Dr. Kayla Cross and Evangelist Shirley Brown Johnson, aka the Jesus Girl. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks for having me.
So today we will be discussing the Roe versus Wade, or Roe v. Wade, and the overturn of the Roe v. Wade. So before we get into the discussion, Dr. Kayla is going to give us a summary of how Roe v. Wade came into effect and what led to the overturn.
So in 1969, there was one of the court cases that became precedent for the United States when it came to abortion laws. When Roe, who was a female who was pregnant with, I think it was her third child, she decided to sue the state of Texas for the right to abort her child because the ability to not do so was a violation of her personal rights and her right to privacy. In that court case, she did win. And over the years, that court case became what other states base their laws on abortion rights. Now, years later, we fast forward to 2021, 2022, and that has been decided to be overturned. This is no longer mandatory throughout the United States, but now it is left up to the individual states to make the laws surrounding abortion.
Okay. So, Evangelist Shirley, you being a young minister in the church, and I'm sure you counsel a lot of young women, what approach does the church take from your standpoint in regards to women who, young ladies who may become pregnant, feel that they're not ready to be a mother or a parent? What approach, in your opinion, do you think the church takes as far as keeping the child or aborting the child?
Oof, right? Okay, so I would have to say that it is a difficult question to answer because of the stance that we take biblically. A part of our commandments is thou shalt not kill. But understanding that there's 10 of those commandments of what thou shalt not do. A lot of those commandments have already been broken by people prior to us and even in our day. And God is a God that forgives. However, we don't take his forgiveness and just say, whatever, I'll do what I want to do. So when we're talking about abortion and, I'm not ready to keep the baby, that is a locked and loaded question because there's a lot of things that surround how a person could become pregnant. Maybe it's not always willfully and maybe, a person that comes to you, with that particular stance or circumstance surrounding this decision, it's going to take a lot to talk with them and just to, kind of let them know. First of all, one of the things that I think that as being in the church, one of the biggest things that we've lost is listening. And so one of the things that, in my personal position to do is to listen and to counsel from that place. One, I have to bring out my spiritual points, what I believe. However, I do have to take into consideration how they came to me. What is the circumstances surrounding this present pregnancy? Will I ever say, yes, just go get an abortion? Probably not. Right. However, if it is a decision, because we've been given this thing called free will, and we can make decisions in our will. And so one of the psychological things that as being a therapist is that we learn is anything you take away from people, they want it. So if you take that position from me, now I want it. So, even with overturning the Roe v. Wade, a lot of people now are going to say, oh, well, you say I can't have it. No, I this is what I want. And so sometimes they'll seek it by any means necessary. So my stance would be, I would have to listen. I would have to direct in a way that I know spiritually, but also support a decision that a person is making. Right. I would tell them I'm never going to turn my back on you. I'm never going to stop loving you. I'm never going to stop caring for you as a person. If this is a decision that you make personally, let it be that personal decision. And all I can do is be there for them.
Great answer. So,
Very well said.
Yeah, really. So, Dr. Kayla, you have that 16-year-old in your office, and same situation. She's pregnant. Parents don't even know yet. And she's coming to you. She really doesn't want to have the child. She's afraid to tell her parents. What kind of advice do you give her?
Well, I think that you're exactly right. Starting with listening, collecting all the facts, seeing what the social situation is like, seeing what the home situation is like, and truly going over all the options. I think that counseling is exactly what we need to do in these situations. And even from medical standpoints, you don't just walk into a clinic and receive an abortion.
Right.
There is always counseling that's involved, because whether the pregnancy is wanted or not, we don't know what the emotional implications post will be. So counseling, listening are always a part of what we do. When a person becomes pregnant, they are in charge of their body. And that is something that, whether they want to disclose to the rest of the family involved, whatever help they need to carry out the decision, whatever it may be, whether that means going forward with the pregnancy, terminating the pregnancy, we have many clinics that are around that can aid in that process. Planned Parenthood, I think, over the years has become the name that is associated with terminations of pregnancies. But that is only one of the many clinics that are available through local hospitals, in bigger facilities. But all of those facilities, beyond my doing in my office, are equipped to help counsel people at all parts of a journey when it comes to pregnancy.
Okay. So, Corey, from a male's perspective, your girlfriend's pregnant. She doesn't want to have the baby, but you have the baby. You want to have the baby. So, do you support that she just feels that she's neither one of you all are ready, or do you encourage her to, you know what, you're going to go through with it and you need to have this baby?
I'm going to be honest. I wouldn't want her to have an abortion, but it's her body, and I can't tell her what to do with her body. I would tell her, I'll support you in whatever decisions you make, but I'm not with aborting the child. You know what I mean? I'm going to take care of the kid. If that's what you're worried about, whether we're together or not, I'm still going to be that kid's father. So I would say, whatever you do, I support you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't believe that, I don't know how the states and these countries getting involved in this, telling someone what to do with their body. That's crazy to me. What if a young girl goes out there and gets raped? And you know what I mean? It's just...
Right.
I don't think they should get involved in that. That's their body.
I totally agree. And before we started, I was talking to Dr. Kayla, and I was telling her I was watching the news prior to coming, and they were talking about, the voting and what's the main concern. And unfortunately, the whole Roe v. Wade abortion is only 5% of the people that are really concerned about that now. That's a major problem.
And that's a big problem in the medical community, because when you start to limit what we can do as medical providers, it's only a trickle-down effect from there. Because again, it's the right to choose what to do with your body is definitely kind of the precipitating act to all of this. But having to have states where women are waiting until they're almost dead to be saved from a pregnancy that was not viable to begin with, you're now risking the life of other people involved. It's not just a fetus or a baby at that point. It's when you start to limit it on a high level, that those little circumstances that some people, even if they're against abortion, would say are okay, they're not available for us as medical providers.
So, Evangelist, what can the church do to educate the people more on pregnancy? I know, it's you go to church and all they say is, oh, you need to abstain. Well, yeah, okay. But we found out you all didn't abstain years ago. So don't tell me something you didn't even practice.
Right.
Because stuff comes out years down the line.
Yeah.
You may be 75 now, but we found out what you did at 20. So
Absolutely.
you didn't abstain. So that doesn't work.
Right.
that doesn't work. It didn't work for us, and it's not working
It's not
today.
working.
So what do you say? What do you say to your youth? How do you encourage them to, or discourage them, I guess, from getting into a situation where they have to worry about, okay, now do I keep a baby or do I abort it?
Um, and I think that's it right there is communicating, and talking about real life situations. And I can only speak for me is, the youth of my church, they love me because I'm a transparent preacher. I have the ability to, jump back and forth from the previous generation because that's where I was raised in my mom's generation. But I'm also a part of, this new day somewhat. I don't understand everything, but I can be honest, and I'm honest about me. And, when we talk about, salvation in church, the biggest hiccup about that is, we are showing them who we are today, but we're not showing them where we came from because none of us was born speaking in tongue out the womb and just knowing Jesus. Yes, the word says, I knew you while you were in your mother's womb and before. However, you were still born in sin and shaped in iniquity. And so therefore, I think it's about being transparent. A lot of this generation, before things were hidden and they
Right.
didn't talk to us about stuff. They didn't
Right.
tell us how to prepare, for things. That's why, our generation now, they think it's just about sneakers and nobody taught them about life insurance and nobody taught them about different things that's going on. And so we have a generation that is absolutely empty-headed about these things. And now we got GoFundMe's happening when people die because they didn't teach us about these things. And so it's important. So, not that I say my parents were bad. It's generational. They only knew what they knew. But then
Right.
I have to take what I've been taught, and I have to increase on that. And so I got educated. And so my job is to educate, but not just to educate what the book said, educate what my life did. What happened in my life and how did I handle that situation? Did I end up in some of them situations that you was in or that you haven't, came across yet? Absolutely. And this is what I did. And I think that when generations see you, this generation particularly sees you and hears you being transparent, because it's not about what you say. These days, people, they don't care about what you say.
Right.
Like, what can you show me? What can you tell me? What about your life? Like, it's good to read the Bible, but what does your life say? What did you come through? And so that's what I do. I'm transparent. I tell them where I've been. I tell them what I've had to experience, with wisdom, of course. And I think they respect that more. And I can remember a conversation that my young people had on a talk show. And they said, oh, I don't know what you guys deal with at your church, but at mine, our evangelist is straight up. You don't like what she got to say, you better not come because she going to talk to you about sex. And the church is, ooh and ah. I said, what you mean, ooh, ah? You better talk to them about that because they're going to learn from it somewhere,
Right.
but they may not learn the appropriate way. So communication is big. Communication is key. And it's not what happens in this house stays in this house. If it hurts you, if it destroyed you, if it did something to you, God knows. If you got pregnant by your uncle, pregnant by your dad, like it's not. Don't keep it in the house. Like
Right.
you got to talk about that.
Right.
And you never know. Somebody else had to go through that. But if we never share our story,
Right.
then how will they know? So for me, I'm big on communication and I'm big on being transparent.
That's good. And I feel that I'm the same way. Like I was brought up in a Christian household, and when I was pregnant with my first child, I was 18 years old. So, of course, when the parents find out, they get upset, but it's like, and I've always been outspoken. I might I may lose a few teeth after, but I'm going to say it. And I'm like, well, and my dad at the time was the assistant pastor of the church, so, they were very active or whatever. But I had to say to them, but you all never made me feel comfortable. You never made me feel like I could come to you and say that, I'm sexually active. So if I would have said it, I probably would have got a beating, and
Right.
you better not
Right.
go out this house, and now you're with us all the time. So you never made me feel like I could have that discussion, and I wanted to make sure, when I became a mom, that I was not going to be like that with my children. Granted, I had 2 sons, I didn't have daughters, but I even told them, 14, 15 years old, like, and they're just collecting condoms because they come in all colors. So I had to say, but okay, I'm not mad at you for that, but I want you to know that when that time comes, not that I'm telling you, now I'm not giving you permission to go out there and do it, but I can't be with you 24/7.
Exactly.
So, but if you're going to make that choice, you better double up and triple up on all them colors in there. Yeah. Because I always told them, babies are real.
They are.
And you know what? You may not be the one carrying the baby, and the baby may not even be living with you, but you have an obligation to that child for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
And you know what? It worked. Like, I have one grandson, and my son was in his 30s by the time he had a child. So it worked. But you're so right. They just, I don't know if they taught us what they knew, or they really didn't know, so they didn't know how to teach us.
Right.
No, because
Exactly.
kids are curious. You know what I mean? So you have to talk to them. And no one spoke to me about sex when
Right.
I got to high school, and there was a senior looking at me, and she taught me. I said, okay. So, but some parents just, I don't know if they're not comfortable with
Right.
talking to the kids about it, or I don't know. So my parents didn't talk to me about sex. I just went and had sex.
Yeah, it was always kind of one of those
It's like,
subjects that was
don't
like,
touch it.
Yeah,
you know what I
like,
mean? Like, but you have to.
I'm saying, how did I get here? What'd you
have
do?
to.
Yeah. But I also think with what you're all saying is really important is that kids are always listening.
Yes.
Whether it's to what you're saying directly or what you're not saying, there was a culture that was in the house that said, oh, that's not what we're doing. And when you're telling us about how you run your ministry and you say, this is what we do here, people are going to listen because they're going to feel accepted.
Absolutely.
I don't feel accepted if I'm having sex in my house by my parents, so I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to do what I do, but I don't know who to go to for problems when they
Right.
arise. So I
Right.
think that communication is really just such a theme throughout everything we're talking about. It's whether or not you're directly communicating.
Yes.
Kids are listening.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it's amazing because the ministry is growing with youth and young adults. Like, it just all of a sudden happened, like out of nowhere. But I think it's because they're like, I heard you on Facebook Live, and they couldn't believe some of the things I was talking about. I have to
Right.
because if I don't, I can't get mad at the world teaching you or somebody else teaching you.
Exactly.
Or, Corey, like he said, running into a senior and, hey,
Looked at them eyes, and that was it.
I couldn't pass a class after that. Except sex education.
Yeah.
But can I say something?
Sure.
So in your church, so you speak to the kids about sex and stuff like that?
absolutely.
Well, that's good because the kid won't come to you, so you may have to spark the conversation.
Right.
So then they'll feel comfortable. Oh, it's okay to talk to, someone about it because she brought it up to me. But a kid's just not going to come to you and say,
Yep.
"Hey, I'm feeling funny about this, and this guy likes me." They kind of keep it a secret.
Right.
But if you open up and say, "Well, X, Y, and Z," it might come around.
It's
Right.
it's true. I think it's that open door because now I get text messages from the youth in our church, and they're like, "Can you talk with me and pray with me and help me because now I want to keep my body." And it's because I opened up that door. And when I opened up the door, it wasn't a judgmental door. It wasn't a door of shame. It wasn't a
Right.
door of guilt. It wasn't a door of embarrassment. My take on it was, let's dismantle shame. Let's dismantle guilt. Like, get it out your mind because guess what? I had a baby out of wedlock, which means I was getting down and dirty. Let's be for real. And God still called me to be one of his vessels to use.
Exactly. So it's all about keeping it real.
Yeah.
Keeping it real. So, Dr. Kayla, do you see many cases in your office with like young women with these like torn between do I or don't I?
I would say that now my practice is an adult practice that I'm in currently. So we see people who are 17 and up. 17 is the youngest. But I have to say that people deciding, it's not just young people. I have people who are married, people who are older, people that are towards menopause, people that have health conditions that they want the baby, but physically they may have other children that if they pursue the pregnancy may not be able to be physically here to take care of those other children. So, definitely what we're talking about here with teens is huge, but that's not just who abortion affects.
Right.
I do like to say in my office, though, when I have, when I was seeing younger kids, one of the scariest statistics I find is that the average age of first sexual contact in the United States is 12 years old.
Wow.
Because of acts that are consensual and non-consensual. So having conversations about bodies is something that should start very young. And again, in a biblical sense,
12?
in a 12.
What's that, like
yes.
6th grade?
I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
6th grade.
Yes,
And again, that's bringing in people who have consented to having, like, participating in a sexual act and people who have had things done to them against their will, which is part of why we vaccinate for certain, STD-related things before age 12, because you want to get people before, statistically speaking, they would have had intercourse.
Right.
But I try to have the sex, drugs, rock and roll conversation with parents in the room.
Okay.
Because I don't know what that parent is talking about at home. I don't know what their religious affiliation with is. But if I can start the conversation, they either know they can call me to continue the conversation.
Right.
We touch back on it every year. And I try to make it based on the age of the kid, what they understand. Because there's some 12-year-olds that totally understand, some 12-year-olds that have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right.
So we try to make it age appropriate, but doing it with the parent there. So it can be a building block for them to have more of a conversation about, well, this is what Kayla said. This is what we believe in our house. And how do we make all of that work together?
Got it. So Corey, so we can talk a lot from the female perspective as far as, talking to our children. And even though Evangelist and I, we didn't have girls, we had boys, but there's only so much you can say to a boy being a female. So from the father or male perspective, what do you say to the son?
What do you say to your son? Well, you got to tell him to protect himself, not just from pregnancy, from diseases. That's the most important thing. You know what I mean? You can get something that you can't get rid of, and it could take you out of here. So you just tell him you got to be responsible, and you just can't lay down with anybody. You know what I mean? My father didn't talk to me. Like, I was just a rolling stone. You know what I mean? No one talked to me, and I didn't talk to my son about it really, because no one talked to me. So I just didn't really have that talk with him. And so I really didn't have my son. I didn't have to talk with my son. I really didn't. I can't even say I did. I didn't even have to talk with my son. It just, and I don't know if my ex-wife did with my girl, but I know they was on birth control at a young age when they got to high school. I know she had put them on birth control and stuff like that. She had told me, which I thought was good, because there was pretty girls developed and stuff like that, and then they're not gonna come to you. But now, if I can go back, I would tell them, you got to be careful who you're with, because this is forever. A kid is forever, not, you know what I mean? Not
Right.
18 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you might not like that girl in 5 years, and you're stuck with her. You know what I mean? So it's just tough. What do you say? I really don't know. I really don't know what to say. I'm lost on that one. I am.
Right. But you'll be surprised words come to you, like, because, you get a lot of respect out here from the younger guys.
Yep.
And, Mr. Corey, Mr. Corey. So
Yeah.
you better be prepared, because one of them may step to you. But I believe that when it comes, when it happens,
I might have the right
you'll
words.
You'll
It's just
know what to say.
when my son told me he was having a kid, I was shocked. I was like, wow, like, really? And I was like, wow, I dropped the ball on this one, because I didn't really have to talk with him. I didn't. He was a little fast, and he got a kid young, and I didn't think he was ready, but I think it made him ready. It matured him, because he was going down like a rough road, and when he told me he was having a kid, he kind of slowed down and got a little mature, and he's a great dad. He's a great dad. He was a young dad, but he's a great dad.
Will you talk to him now about, does he have a son or a daughter?
He has
Yes,
sons and daughters.
So will you talk to him about how to talk to his sons?
Oh, I do now. That I do.
Right.
That I do. I said you got to first of all, you got to pick your battles with your kids. Everything can't be an argument because you guys are always going to be like this.
Right.
So I tell them you got to pick your battles with your kids. You can't always be on them for every little thing. But I wasn't like that with him because he was the only boy in the house, and I was trying to give him some tough love because I seen a lot of him in me, and I want him to be better than me, not like me. You know what I mean? So I guess every parent wants their kid to be better than them.
Absolutely.
I came up a little rough, went left, came back, got down the right road. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, he's a good dad now, he's a good guy.
That's good. So, not to put you on blast or anything, but I know you're soon to be grandma. Congratulations. So, how did you feel when you got that information?
Well, I wasn't surprised. Because again, we go back to, the collecting of the condoms. You're not just doing it as a hobby. But again, they have, pastors' kids, they have it a lot harder than just kids that just go to church.
We do.
It's a different dynamic because, everybody's looking at you. Like, you're not supposed to make mistakes. You're not supposed to, do what other kids do. But, at some point in time, I set my kids down and I said, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something that I didn't hear. You are human. And you are going to make human mistakes like your grandmother, your grandfather, like mommy. So one of the biggest things out there is that, again, they're men. They're young men now. And my young men are fine. I mean, everybody's chasing them. And I'm like, wait a minute. I have to tell them, don't lay with everything, because, again, we got to think of disease first before we get to,
Right.
a kid, because you may lay down and get up with something you don't want. And again, it's as a mom, they don't really want to, oh, mom, please, don't stop. I'm like, well, I'll follow you around the house, but I got to say what I got to say. Because you're not going to say, nobody told me,
Right.
So I had to have those hard conversations. And I mean, I didn't, when I found out, I wasn't mad. I wasn't angry. Again, I told him, I'm not looking at you as the pastor's kid. I'm looking at you as a kid.
Right.
The baby's not a mistake. What you did, according to biblical standard, that was the mistake.
Right.
God forgives. I don't hold grudges. Let's talk about how you're going to be a great father. He has that in mind because his father wasn't there. His mind is, I'm not going to do what my father did. I want to be that father that I didn't have. And so, and I support him in that. And my kids need to know that even as evangelist, as pastor, you're going to be supported in your mistake.
Right.
I'm not going to make you feel like this mistake is the end of the world for you, because it's not, in any aspect. Naturally, it's not. Like Corey, you said, I tell him, you might not even marry this girl, but guess what? You're going to have to deal with each other well after this kid is 18, and so you got to man up. And I, too, seen changes in him from prior to finding out they were pregnant to now. Like, it calmed him down. And I was like, okay, I might like this. Like, if I would have known this, we wouldn't have waited so long. Now, I'm just joking. But like, anybody that knows him, he was just.
He definitely is calm. I have to say,
Yeah.
he's just so reserved and
Yes.
He's ready.
Is.
He's just ready.
It changes some kids.
It is.
Yeah.
He works.
For the
like,
better.
Like, he's on his job. Like, he's working. He's like, I got a kid to support. I mean, he goes to work at 9. He's getting out at 9. He's like, I got a kid to support. He's like, I'm gonna be there for my kid. In his language is different. And he is ready. He's preparing himself every day. And so, again, I just told him, you're not, it's a mistake, okay? And you're not your mistake. Like,
Right.
you can bounce back from this, and you can still be whoever you want to be. And at the end of the day, Jesus don't judge, he forgives, neither do I. Because who are we really that God would be mindful of any of us?
Right. And I think that's what people need to realize. Just as we can be receptive to you keeping the child, we should be able to be receptive to your decision to, I can't do it right now.
We have other ways that we can teach men and women. It's not just, a female problem at this point. Unfortunately, most of the birth control methods are female driven, the most reliable ones anyway. But if we're getting to that point, we need to have the conversation of, well, how do I use a condom? Do I keep it on the whole time? Do I take it off? How does this whole thing work? And yeah, because guess what? If you take it off, it doesn't work.
What if it gets lost?
Very true.
Then you come see me the next day. But we need to have those
Can
conversations.
you reuse it?
But those are real questions. People come in asking those questions because they weren't taught. They don't know.
Right,
Again,
right.
is one condom, is two better than one? Absolutely not. One at a time. Friction breaks condoms. Only one.
Right.
So we need to educate on proper use of tools that are there. And then what happens after? If a baby is conceived, how do we take care of you as a mother? I think part of the conversation we don't have often is the father, whether the woman's pregnant keeping it, the woman's pregnant not keeping it, things go awry during the pregnancy. I think dads are lost in that conversation often, which is a totally separate problem, but a very important one.
Right.
And the emotional aspect. How do we get the church back in, whatever decisions made, whatever outcomes happen, to make sure that that person is emotionally and spiritually taken care of?
Right. So, and on the spiritual side, I would say, obviously, would be my number one, is to always, one, implement prayer. But understanding that we can't stop just with prayer, that we have to step outside and be more proactive, and that is providing, that education. One of the things that I always say is that whether we want them to do it or not, it's going to be done. And so we gotta make sure they are prepared, and that means having those, classes. Whether that means I mean, they may come after me after I say this, but having involvement to show what these things look like. So that's physical toys, things involving body parts. They do it in schools. We have to make sure that our kids are prepared. Am I promoting sex? No. But if we can,
gotta teach 'em.
if we can educate them before they have it, or maybe they had it and they still don't really know the results that come from it. Because again, we can't determine the household that all these kids are in. I could talk about my household, but I can't talk about every person's household that steps foot into church. And so I think education is going to be one of the biggest, conversations that we'll ever have. And then, we have to have a doctor involved, because if you lay down and get up and you got something that, you can't get rid of, I can pray for you, but you're still going to be scratching. We need to get you some.
And not scratching like franchise.
And we need to have you educated around, STDs and what that looks like and how your life is, after that. My job is to, deal with youth and young adults. And, a couple of them, came and they told me, they had herpes. And so then I had to say, so now how does life go here on out? Because you can't get rid of that. So you have to now be forthcoming to your partners and say, hey, this is it. This is where I'm at. This is what I got. And it's unfortunate, because you're still a teen. But this is the result of somebody not taking the time to talk to you about, about life. And so I that's what I would say, to the doctor. We need you, because we need you to talk about stuff that, we can't answer. Like, what is that? What does herpes look like? Chlamydia, gonorrhea, all of those things that come, these STDs. Like, can we get rid of it? Can't we? All of those things.
Right. Right.
Do they have sex education in schools?
They
I
call
never
it,
had
They
it.
call it.
I didn't have it.
I didn't have it, but I think it's called something else. Not no more. I don't know. Well, they have sex education with each other in pornos.
No, and that's truly
It's true.
where so many people get their sex education from, which is so delusional
Yeah.
a lot of the time, because then you have this very skewed perception of
Exactly.
what
Yep.
sex looks like. And when you're trying to figure out what sex should be,
Yep.
again, it should be between two people who are like have a mutual understanding and
Absolutely.
exploring their bodies, doing all of that. And most pornographic material is not a great way to learn about how to have a
And it's
great
true, like,
consensual
Yeah, a
relationship.
lot of them are like, oh, we watch porn.
Interesting.
Wow.
And I've heard a couple of people say they caught their kid, like young kids, like I'm talking 9 and 10, and I'm like, what makes a 9 or 10-year-old want to go see porn? How in the world do they even know about it?
Mhm.
And I know one person had said, well, they got it from their friend at school,
Yes.
and I'm like, 9 and 10,
Hmm.
like most kids that age. Well, when I was growing up, ugh, you was a kissing. You say
Yeah.
that to your parents. But now
That's
they're
true.
ready to just go for it. So before we wrap this up, I just have a question. So how do you all feel about the morning after pill?
It's great. But there's a lot to teach about it. So morning after pill, do you want me to explain how it works a little bit? So
Yeah.
what it does is it actually shifts a woman's hormones so that they do not ovulate. So if a person is close to ovulation or not going to ovulate, or if a person is close to ovulation, was going to ovulate, and there's sperm present in the uterus, it stops them from ovulating. So when you're thinking about has conception actually even occurred, the answer is no. So like that sperm, whether it's hanging there, is not going to unite with an egg because it's going to stop the egg from actually being released from an ovary. So
Wow.
it's not an abortion pill. It's very different than an abortion pill. There has been no unification of sperm and an ovum there. And then it usually causes some pretty intense bleeding after, because you have a very high hormone spike and then it comes down. So the morning after pill is only, if you look at like a pill pack, a regular pill pack of birth control, it's about 4 of those pills taken together at once.
Wow.
And what's this? Gotta be. There's no side effects to it. Like,
Oh, there's nasty side effects. Intense bleeding usually will mess up your period for a couple of months. People emotionally sometimes feel unwell because it's a really big hormone surge and then a drop. But long-term wise, there shouldn't be any.
So do you think it's something that people take maybe more often than what they should?
I see it a lot. And when I have patients that you can now get it over the counter, which is really nice. You can go in, you don't need a prescription. But I still have patients that it is covered by insurance, so they'll come to me. And if I notice that there's a pattern, I try to have a conversation about like, what's going on here? Like, let's talk about this a little bit, because there's better ways.
Right.
I think one thing we didn't talk about here was how we want to really focus for women on preserving their fertility too, because maybe there's a time where they are pregnant or they're in a marriage, they want to get pregnant at some point, but maybe the answer is not right now. These birth control methods can really help to preserve their fertility long term. And that's the same thing with STD prevention. STDs, even if they can be cured or not cured, whatever it is, can have effects on a woman and a man's fertility in the future. So by teaching about this, we're actually helping people in the future when they are ready to have kids to make sure those their attempts will be more successful.
Okay. Now, is the morning after pill anything, if you haven't discussed it with your youth, is that something that you would bring up if you feel that, there's a few of them that may slip up?
Oh, most certainly, because they brought it to me,
Oh,
so
okay.
they know about it. And I mean, one gentleman was like, "Yep, I just used the morning after," so I didn't know all the dynamics surrounding it. But I'm like, yeah, that's not a method, to just again repetitively keep using again. And I will coin what Dr.
Kayla.
Dr. Kayla said about the best way is abstinence, which is the biblical way. And I mean, rightfully so, this will help you sustain from all of these things if it's
Right.
done, in the way that, Jesus created sex to be. However, we got to realize where we are in the time frame that we're in. And, the enemy is also prevalent in the land. I mean, he gave them permission, and so therefore, again, they brought this to me, and I'm looking at them like, what? Okay. So now I got to talk about it because it's out there. They know about it, and so yes, I have to bring it up, and I don't mind. Sometimes I'm shocked at what these youth and young adult do know. And sometimes we think we're keeping something from them, and they're like,
educating us.
yeah, I already know about that. Like, where you been? Obviously not where you've been, but we have to talk about it. And so again, to be honest, I love being around the youth because we teach each other. Like I learn from them because I don't know everything. I don't know the new things, and I don't know all of these methods that they're coming up with and all of these things that they're trying, but they bring it to me. It helps me to go back and research, and then we can have a bigger conversation,
Right.
at a later date when I have more knowledge and understanding of what's really happening. And so I think it is an important conversation because, some of these young kids are looking at it like it's a way for me to just, have sex with somebody and not be protected. But again, there's other things you need to worry about.
Right, exactly. Well, it's been a very good conversation. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Anyone have any last words before I have you drop your socials?
No.
You good?
Oh, it was good.
Okay, Dr. Kayla, how can we reach you?
I am on Instagram at Kayla E Cross 13. I have no fun content, but I have a cute kid. You can see her on there.
Evangelist Shirley?
I can be reached on Facebook right under Shirley Brown, and Instagram at the Jesus Girl.
And I'm COJ 2 on 8 on all social media.
And you can find me on Insta at ms_Sherla. My Facebook is my name, Sherla White. You could always drop us an email. We would love to hear from you at ltc.ot@gmail.com. And you can find us on YouTube. My YouTube link is on my Facebook page. So until next time, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank
Signing
you.
off.
Be safe.
Peace.